Lenox Avenue, Harlem. Summer 1935. Late afternoon. The sun hangs low between brick buildings, turning the street gold. Music spills from open windows, vendors shout prices, children weave through the crowd barefoot. Old men argue over Harlem is loud, alive, unbroken, even as the Great Depression tightens its grip on everything else. Bumpy Johnson walks south toward 135th Street, white shirt, suspenders, sleeves rolled despite the heat. His stride is calm, unhurried, but his eyes never stop moving. He notices reflections in storefront glass, the rhythm of footsteps behind, the way conversations dip when he passes, then rise again. Before we go any further, if you want more untold stories like this, subscribe to Bumpy Johnson, hit like, and tell me in the comments what you'd do if you knew danger was already watching you. Bumpy doesn't know 5 men are tracking him. 1 waits inside a parked car pretending to read a newspaper. 2 linger across the street near a dress shop. 1 stands half hidden in a barbershop doorway. Another lies flat on a rooftop, watching the block like a chessboard. They've followed him for 2 hours. They aren't from Harlem, and that's what makes them dangerous. Dutch Schultz paid them to end this today. In the next few minutes, Bumpy Johnson will either die on Lenox Avenue or become something Harlem has never seen before. A man brushes past him near the curb. Too quick, too stiff. Apologizes without eye contact, keeps moving. Bumpy slows. A woman on her stoop doesn't smile like she always does. A shoeshine kid who usually calls his name stays silent. A car idles where there wasn't one moments ago. His instincts tighten. Harlem in 1935 is under siege. Jobs are scarce. Money is thin. But beneath the struggle, one system never stopped working. Then every day, working people bet nickels and dimes on a 3-digit number chasing 600 to 1 odds. It's not just gambling. It's rent money, grocery money, hope. That money stays in black hands, and Dutch Schultz wants it. Schultz doesn't negotiate. He takes. In the Bronx and beyond, he seized numbers operations with bombs, kidnappings, and terror. He believes fear breaks everyone eventually. He believes Harlem will fold the same way. But Harlem didn't fold. Stephanie St. Cove, Claire refused to bow. She called Schultz out publicly, bought newspaper ads, named him a coward in print. When intimidation escalated, she needed someone to stand between Harlem and collapse. That man is Bumpy Johnson, 30 years old, born in South Carolina, sharp, disciplined, loyal, not flashy, not reckless. Trusted by the neighborhood in ways outsiders don't. Schultz understands exactly what Bumpy represents. That's why he wants him removed. The contracts go out quietly, multiple attempts. Outsiders only. Men with no ties to Harlem. Professionals who don't care about witnesses. Today, they think Bumpy reaches the middle of the block. Footsteps speed up behind him. 2 men close in from the rear. 1 steps out from a doorway. 2 more emerge from the parked car. 5 men form a loose circle. The street keeps moving, unaware that a line has just been crossed. Bumpy Johnson, the lead man, says, hand tucked inside his jacket, "You're coming with us." Bumpy stops walking. He doesn't turn right away. "I don't know you," he says evenly. "But I don't go anywhere with people I don't know." Dutch Schultz wants to talk. That name lands heavy. Bumpy turns slowly, hands visible. Schultz sends 5 men to talk to 1, he says. "That's not talking." One of the men behind him snaps, "Stop wasting time." The lead man, and that's when Bumpy makes his move. "These men work for Schultz," he shouts, loud enough for the block to hear. "They're here to kill me." Everything changes in seconds. Windows fly open, men pour out of the barbershop. A vegetable cart is shoved sideways, blocking the car. Voices rise. People crowd closer instead of backing away. 50 witnesses. Then more. The hitmen freeze. "Back up," one yells, pulling his gun halfway free. Bumpy backs toward the crowd, steady, controlled. "You shoot me," he says. "You don't leave this street today." A sharp crack splits the air. A gunshot. It doesn't come from the men around him. It comes from above. A warning shot sparks off the pavement near the lead man's shoes. Silence drops hard. Bumpy looks at the men surrounding him. "Last chance," he says. "Go." They hesitate, then retreat, backing away. Pride shattered, faces remembered. The car tries to pull off. Tires scream. Flat. Bottles and curses follow them down the block. Harlem exhale. Bumpy straightens his shirt, walks into the barbershop. "Squeeze me in," he says. "I need a shave." Like nothing happened. By nightfall, The story is everywhere. Not shouted, not exaggerated, just passed along quietly. 5 men came for Bumpy Johnson. 5 men left empty-handed, and Harlem stood up. Across the city, Dutch Schultz hears the news, and for the first time, he understands something too late. Harlem isn't a place you take by force, and Bumpy Johnson isn't a man you corner alone. The question now isn't whether Schultz will strike again, it's how far he's willing to go. Bumpy sits in the barber chair like it's any other afternoon. The razor flashes under the light. The barber shop smells of hot towels, hair tonic, and talcum powder. A radio hums softly in the corner, half music, half static. Outside, Lenox Avenue keeps moving, but something underneath it has shifted. People keep glancing through the glass, not staring, checking, confirming. The barber's hand trembles slightly as he works. "You all right, Bump?" the barber asks, trying to keep his voice steady. Bumpy meets his eyes in the mirror, calm, unbothered. "I'm fine," he says. "They the ones who gotta worry." A young runner slips into the doorway, breathless, eyes wide. "They gone?" he whispers. Bumpy nods once. "Tell Madam Queen," Bumpy says. "Tell her they showed their hand." The runner is gone as fast as he appeared. Outside, Harlem starts talking. Not loudly, not recklessly. Harlem doesn't need noise to spread truth. A vendor murmurs to a customer. A customer leans close to a doorman. A doorman tells a bartender. By sunset, everyone who matters knows exactly what happened. 5 strangers tried to take Bumpy Johnson in broad daylight, and that's what Dutch Schultz didn't understand. Harlem isn't just streets and buildings, it's a living network. Every barber shop, every candy store, every church basement, every stoop is part of a system that watches and remembers. Outsiders stand out. Fear doesn't move cleanly here. Bumpy finishes his shave and steps back onto the sidewalk. The heat presses down again. People pretend not to look, but they do. They've just witnessed something bigger than a confrontation. They've witnessed a war. Bumpy walks without rushing. A kid on a bicycle glides up beside him. "Mr. Johnson," the kid murmurs, eyes forward. "Same hat as earlier." By the pawn shop. Bumpy doesn't slow. "Go home," he says softly. "Don't run." The kid peels away. Bumpy turns down a side street. Not fast. Not obvious. Just enough to break a line of sight. He passes a bakery. Smells fresh bread and sugar. 2 men stand near a doorway pretending to talk. One gives the smallest nod. Protection without shadows. This is how Harlem works. Dutch Schultz thinks he paid for precision. What he bought instead was exposure. Because now those 5 men have faces that won't be forgotten. That night, Schultz paces in his office, anger simmering under calculation. Whiskey sits untouched on the desk. The report plays over and over in his head. 5 men. Oblique Street. Witnesses everywhere. Retreat. That's not failure. That's humiliation. Schultz isn't stupid. He understands what happened. This wasn't just about Bumpy Johnson. This was Harlem telling him the cost of entry. And Schultz doesn't like paying. Back in Harlem, Bumpy moves carefully, not hiding, adjusting. He stops into a small cafe with fogged windows and the smell of coffee and fried dough. An old waitress sets down a cup without asking, doesn't look at him. 2 booths back, a man sits alone, clean suit, quiet presence. The kind of man you don't notice unless you're trained to. Schultz is angry, the man says without turning his head. Bumpy stirs his coffee slowly. Anger makes mistakes. He's bringing in new people, different faces. "Good," Bumpy says. "They won't know the streets either." The man hesitates. "What if he stops coming at you directly?" Bumpy looks up now. "Then he starts coming at Harlem," he says. And that's worse for him. They part without shaking hands. Later that evening, Bumpy meets Stephanie St. Clair. Papers covered the table like a general's map. Names, routes, safe places, signals. She looks up when he enters. Doesn't ask if he's hurt. She already knows. "Tell me," she says. Bumpy explains, plainly. No drama. When he finishes, St. Clair nods. "He wanted you to panic," she says. "He wanted Harlem to see you run." Bumpy's jaw tightens. Instead, they saw him blink. "That's important," she says, "because now we move from defense to pressure." "Pressure how?" Claire taps the papers. "We make Harlem expensive. Not violent, inconvenient, unprofitable. Every runner warned, every outsider noticed. Every move cost him time, money." Bumpy understands immediately. That's strategy. Days pass, then more. Schultz's men report the same problem over and over. Shopkeepers shut down conversations. Strangers get stared out of block. Nothing moves clean. Harlem won't cooperate. And that frustrates Schultz more than resistance ever could. Because resistance can be crushed. Non-cooperation spreads. Bumpy senses the shift before any fewer sightings, less noise, the kind of quiet that feels deliberate. Schultz is changing tactics. No daylight, no crowds. If visibility protects Bumpy, Schultz will try to take him where no one can see. That knowledge hangs over every step. One night, Bumpy stands at his window, looking down at Lenox Avenue. Streetlights glow, radios murmur. Somewhere, a laugh breaks the quiet. Harlem is still standing, but the pressure is building because Schultz doesn't retreat. He escalates. And when men like Schultz escalate, they don't aim to scare anymore. They aim to erase. The question isn't whether he'll try again. It's whether this next move will finally give him what he wants. Night comes heavy now, not loud, not dramatic, heavy. The kind of night where footsteps carry farther than they should, and silence feels deliberate instead of peaceful. Bumpy walks Lenox Avenue again, but tonight the street doesn't chatter the same way. Windows are closed. Radios are lower. Harlem isn't asleep. It's listening. Schultz has changed his approach. No outsiders lingering too long. No cars idling on corners. No sloppy mistakes. That's what worries Bumpy. Because violence is easy to spot. Planning is harder. He meets Stephanie St. Clair one last time that week. Same table. Same sharp eyes. Different conclusion. He's boxed himself in, she says quietly. Too much noise. Too much heat. Bumpy nods. Men like Schultz don't know how to stop. They don't, she agrees. They get stopped. The decision won't come from Harlem. It never was going to. It will come from higher up. From men who understand that chaos draws attention, and attention is bad for business. Days later, the news travels fast and strange. Not through runners, not through corners, through absence. Schultz's people pull back. Numbers collectors report no pressure. Threats stop coming. Phones stop ringing. Then the headline hits. Dutch Schultz is dead. Shot in a New Jersey restaurant far from Harlem, far from Lenox Avenue. Not by Bumpy. Not by St. Clair. By men who decided Schultz had become a liability to everyone. The war ends not with a final showdown, but with a quiet removal. And just like that, Harlem breathes again. Bumpy hears the news standing outside a storefront, hands in his pockets. He doesn't celebrate. He just nods once, like a man confirming what he already knew was coming. That's how these things end. Not with glory, but balance being restored. In the weeks that follow, Harlem's numbers racket stabilizes. Runners return to their roots. Collectors stop looking over their shoulders. Money moves the way it did before fear entered the picture. And Bumpy Johnson is no longer just an enforcer, he's a symbol. The man who walked into an ambush and walked out with the man who proved Harlem couldn't be taken by force. The man who understood that survival wasn't about firepower, it was about people. Stories grow around him. Some exaggerated, some whispered, some true in ways facts can't fully capture. But one detail never. Bumpy didn't win by pulling a trigger. He won by staying calm, by letting witnesses see, by letting community respond, by turning isolation into protection. Years later, younger men would ask him how he survived when so many didn't. Bumpy's answer was always simple. Never mistake noise for power, he told them. Power is what stays standing when the noise fades. That lesson carried him through decades, through prisons, through negotiations with men far more famous than Schultz, through a life where violence was always an option, but never the goal. Lenox Avenue remembers him that way, not as a man who ruled by fear, but as a man the neighborhood chose, and that choice changed everything. If this story showed you that intelligence can outlast intimidation, that community can outweigh force, and that real power doesn't always announce itself, make sure you subscribe to Bumpy Johnson, like this video, comment your thoughts, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next, because the next chapter takes Bumpy out of the street and into a room with the most powerful mob bosses in America. And once again, he'll walk out standing.